The last excuse. Although my memory has let go of all the significant dates in the history of the world, those dates I painstakingly memorized, often staying up late into the night, there's one date that remains as immovable as a pillar on flat land, my wedding date. I neither forget it, nor can I ever forget it. All the events before and after it have faded from my heart, leaving no trace behind. All that diversity has blended into a single unity, and that is the date of my wedding. I wish I could forget it, but how can one forget a date that is recalled daily? Why do I remember it daily? Ask someone who has no refuge left in life but to cling to the name of God for salvation. But do I shy away from marital life because I lack romance, or because I am indifferent to the captivating charms of the fairer sex and have attained a state of detachment? Don't I wish that when I go out for a walk, my beloved would accompany me? Don't I desire to experience the joy of visiting fancy stores with her, even if just to savor the fleeting pleasures of indulgent persuasion? I can feel the pride, joy, and significance that would stir in my heart, just as it does in the hearts of my other brothers. But those pleasures and indulgences are not in my destiny. Because I also see the other side of the picture. As alluring and attractive as one side is, the other is equally heartbreaking and terrifying. Evening falls, and there you are, standing with an unfortunate child in your arms, at a store selling oil or fuel. Darkness descends, and you hurriedly pass through alleyways, clutching a bag of flour under your arm as if you had stolen it. The sun rises, and there you are, with children in tow, seated on a broken chair at a homeopathic doctor's shop. A hawker's tantalizing call reaches your child's ears, and the next thing you know, he's wailing loudly, and your nerves are frayed. I've even seen fathers who, while returning from the office, quickly pop peanuts or candy into their mouths in a disgraceful hurry so that they are finished by the time they reach home, avoiding an attack from their children. It's a disheartening sight when a child throws a tantrum in front of a toy shop at a fair, and the father, with the wisdom of a sage, begins a lecture on the transience of worldly things. The first side of the picture is a sweet dream for me, but the second side is a horrifying truth. In the face of this truth, all my romanticism vanishes. All my originality and creativity have been spent in avoiding the snares of marriage. I know I have to enter the trap, but as attractive and enticing as it is, the bait is equally lethal and poisonous. I see birds writhing and fluttering in this net, and yet I sit on it myself. But recently, my wife has been unrelenting in her insistence that I bring her to the city. Earlier, when I used to visit during holidays, just saying, "Where will you go?" was enough to pacify her. Then I started reassuring her with, "It's too much hassle." After that, I tried to scare her with the inconveniences of domestic life. But lately, her distress has been growing. Now I've even stopped going home during the holidays out of fear that she might accompany me, and I keep making up all sorts of excuses to keep her doubtful. My first excuse was about the life of newspaper editors. Sometimes, I don't get to sleep until midnight, and sometimes, I have to stay up all night. All day, I'm trudging from one street to another. On top of that, there's always the threat of arrest looming over my head. Who knows when I might be arrested or when my bail might be called in? A small army of secret police is constantly on my tail. If I happen to walk through the market, people point at me and say, "There goes the newspaper guy," as if I'm responsible for all the divine and worldly troubles in the world. It's as if my mind is a factory for concocting false news. My entire day is spent saluting officials and flattering the police. The sight of constables makes me queasy. My condition is so dire that even the authorities tremble at the sight of me. One day, out of misfortune, I wandered towards an Englishman's bungalow. The officer asked what I did for a living. I proudly replied, "I'm a newspaper editor." The officer immediately retreated inside and bolted the door. Later, I saw the Memsahib and the children peeking out of the windows as if I were a terrifying creature. Once, I was traveling by train with some friends, so to uphold the dignity of my position, I had to buy a second-class ticket. As soon as I sat down, a man saw my suitcase, read my name and profession, and immediately opened his trunk, pulled out a revolver, and loaded it in front of me to show that he was on guard against me. I never discussed my financial difficulties with my wife because I consider it beneath my dignity to talk about such matters in front of women. Though if I had, I might have earned her sympathy. I was confident that my wife would never consider coming here again. But I was wrong. Her insistence remained unchanged. So, I came up with a second excuse. Cities are breeding grounds for diseases. There's a suspicion of poison in everything you eat or drink: poison in milk, poison in ghee, poison in fruits, poison in vegetables, poison in the air, and poison in the water. Human life is like a line drawn in water. The person you see today may be gone tomorrow. People seem fine one moment, and then their heart stops. They leave home for a walk and end up being hit by a motorcar, their path leading straight to the afterlife. If someone manages to return home in the evening in one piece, consider them lucky. The sound of a mosquito buzzing in your ear makes your heart skip a beat. A fly appears, and you're paralyzed with fear. A rat emerges from its hole, and your life flashes before your eyes. Everywhere you look, it's the domain of Yama, the god of death. If you escape from cars and trams, you fall prey to mosquitoes and flies. Just accept that death is always lurking nearby. I spend my nights battling mosquitoes, my days fighting off flies. How can I protect this frail body from so many enemies? I even breathe cautiously, fearing that tuberculosis germs might invade my lungs. But still, my wife didn't believe me. Her next letter was filled with the same urgency. She wrote, "Your letter has given me one more thing to worry about. Now you must write to me daily, or I won't listen to a word, and I'll come straight to you." I thought to myself, well, I've gotten off easy this time. But I was still worried that she might suddenly get the urge to come to the city. So, I came up with a third excuse. Here, I'm so harried by friends that I can't even catch my breath. They come over and sit down as if they've sold their own homes. If I leave the house, they come in and make themselves comfortable, ordering whatever they want from the servant on credit. And I'm the one who has to pay. Some of them stay for weeks, showing no sign of leaving. I have to entertain them daily, take them to the theater or cinema at night, and then play cards or chess until morning. Most of them can't survive without alcohol. Often, they come here sick, and more often than not, they arrive already ill. Now I have to call a doctor every day, nurse them, and sit by their bedside all night, fanning them, all while listening to their complaints that no one here cares for them. My watch hasn't seen my wrist in months, it's been making the rounds with friends at parties. My long coat is with one gentleman, my jacket with another. My shoes were taken by a clerk. I go to the office wearing the same old coat and worn-out shoes. My friends are always eyeing whatever new thing I bring home. If I buy something, I quickly hide it in the trunk for fear that someone might see it and start planning an excuse to borrow it. On the first of the month, when I get my salary, I sneak home like a thief, fearing that someone might be waiting at the door to pounce on me for money. I don't know why all their needs seem to converge on the first of the month. One day, I returned home at midnight with my salary, only to find half a dozen friends waiting for me. I nearly banged my head against the wall. No matter what excuse I make, none of them works. I tell them I got a letter from home saying my mother is very sick. They respond, "Old people don't die so easily. If she were going to die, why would she have lived so long? She'll be fine in a few days. And even if she does die, what's the big deal about the death of an old person? It's actually a good thing." I say, "There's a lot of pressure to pay the land tax." They reply, "The tax is being suspended these days. There's no need to pay it." If I use the excuse of some religious ritual, they say, "You are a strange creature. Clinging to these outdated customs is beneath your dignity. If you eradicate them, will those people fall from the sky?" In short, there's no escape for me. I thought this excuse would hit the mark. What woman would want to live in a house that's practically a boarding house for friends? But once again, I was wrong. The reply was the same insistence as before. So, I came up with a fourth excuse. The houses here are like bird cages: no air, no light. The stench is so overwhelming that it makes your head spin. Many people fall ill with cholera, typhoid, or tuberculosis because of this stench. It rains, and the house starts leaking. Even if it rains for just an hour, the house keeps dripping all night. There are very few houses that aren't haunted. People have nightmares. Many suffer from insanity. You move into a new house today, and tomorrow you are already thinking about moving out. Everywhere you look, you see carts loaded with furniture, some coming, some going. Carts are all you see. Thefts are so common that if a night passes without incident, people make offerings to the gods. Midnight strikes, and you hear cries of thief. Thief! Catch them! Catch them! People stand at their doors with thick wooden planks, shoes, or tongs in hand, yet the thieves are so skilled that they slip inside unnoticed. I have a particularly uninhibited friend who, out of affection, stays with me for a long time. One night, I heard some noise in the kitchen. I turned on the light and saw him gathering utensils. When he saw me, he let out a hearty laugh and said, "I was trying to trick you." I understood that if he had succeeded, those utensils would have been his. Since I caught him, it was just a trick. How he got into the house is a mystery. Perhaps after playing cards, instead of leaving, he hid in the dark basement. One day, a gentleman came to have a letter written. There was no pen or ink in the room, so I went upstairs to get them. When I returned, he was gone, and so was my fountain pen. In short, city life is no less painful than hellish life. But my wife is so enchanted by city life that none of my excuses work on her. In her next letter, she wrote, "You're making excuses. I won't believe them. Come and get me." Finally, I had to come up with a fifth excuse. This one was about the hawkers. I hadn't even gotten out of bed when strange noises started assaulting my ears. The construction of the Tower of Babel didn't produce such meaningless sounds. It's the hawkers' play with words. It would have been better if these hawkers attracted people to their goods with drums and cymbals, but these upside-down brained fools don't get it. They make such demonic noises that it makes your hair stand on end. Children cling to their mothers in fear. I, too, often jump out of bed at night. One day, a tragedy occurred in my neighborhood. It was 11 o'clock. A woman had gotten up to nurse her baby. Suddenly, a hawker's terrifying voice pierced the air, and she screamed and fainted. It took months of medicine to bring her back to health. Now she sleeps with cotton in her ears. Such incidents are common in cities. Among my friends, many have brought their wives to the city, but the poor women were so frightened by these sounds that they returned home the very next day. In response, my wife wrote, "You think I'll be scared of hawkers' voices? I don't get scared of jackals howling or owls screeching here. Why would I be afraid of hawkers?" Finally, I came up with an excuse that I was sure would work. Though it carried some shame, I was more afraid of the calamity than the shame. So, I wrote that the city is no place for respectable women. The maids here are so foul-mouthed that they respond to words with curses, and as for their appearance, don't even ask. Respectable women would be embarrassed to death just looking at them. From head to toe, they're decked out in gold. When they pass by, it's like a wave of fragrance sweeps over you. How can housewives compete with that? They have hundreds of other concerns. These maids have nothing else to do but dress up. New outfits every day, new manners every day, and they're so flirtatious, it's as if they have quicksilver running through their veins instead of blood. Their sparkling, coquettish, and smiling faces make housewives feel ashamed, and they're so brazen that they forcibly intrude into homes. Everywhere you look, there's a crowd of them. It's impossible for decent men to sit at home because of them. Some come with the excuse of getting a letter written, others to have a letter read. The truth is that they enjoy making the housewives look dull in comparison. That's why respectable women rarely come to the city. I don't know what mistake I made in that letter, but 3 days later, my wife showed up with a tired old porter, holding our 3 children, like an incurable disease, asking around for my address. In a panic, I asked, "Is everything all right?" Taking off her shawl, my wife replied, "Is there some witch sitting in our house? If anyone else steps foot in here, I'll cut off their nose. And don't think you can get away with it." So, now the mystery was out. I slapped my forehead. How could I have known that my plan would backfire on me?
This story was originally written by Premchand, a legendary author of Hindi literature almost 100 years ago. Do let us know if you like the story. If it so happens that you did not like the story, even then, please let us know your choice so that we can find something you would like to listen. If you like the story, tell your friends as well. If you want to enjoy more stories like these from so many other Indian authors, subscribing the channel would make it easy. Bye for now.